Now, with the standardization of weights and measures, combined with a common currency, and a safe, cheap, well-maintained road network, with the standardization of weights and measures combined with a common currency and a safe, cheap, well-maintained road network, the Persian Empire will morph into a tightly integrated, it will change into a tightly integrated and affluent emporium. And this is what it will include. This is what this emporium, this trade market, this huge trade network will include. You're going to have mines in Anatolia that will ship copper, silver, and iron. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, someone asked last class, and I'm going to answer now, that yes, I do allow you to take the lectures. Anything that helps you to learn, for. Okay? We will have, once again, our midterm on the 26th of March, shortly after Nowruz, appropriately enough, and I'll give you your grades the week after. The week after the midterm, you're going to bring your Roger Sabri book with you. Now, Anatolian mines ship copper, silver, and iron. India will export spices, gems, pearls, and gold. Corinth, which is in Greece, and Carthage, which once again is in North Africa, will provide textiles. Egypt will provide papyrus and flax. Flax is a fiber, like linen. Papyrus, you know, is a plant that's found in the marshlands of what would be considered Lower Egypt, which actually is in the north, and that's going to be what they would make paper out of, even though paper at that time is very different from the paper that will be utilized later by the Song Dynasty in China. Phoenicia, which is in Lebanon, Phoenicia, Phoenicia will be responsible for the export of purple dyes. Attica, which is on the outskirts of Athens. Attica, Attica. You have actually a town in New York named Attica where they have prison life under Nelson Rockefeller and his tenure. Attica will provide shields. Shields. A shield to protect yourself from attack. Yes, shields. Attica. I can't hear you. Phoenicia will provide basically purple dye for clothing. Okay? The Black Sea littoral. A littoral means edge, an area, the shorelines, if you will. The Black Sea littoral will be famous for its swords. And Thrace and Lebanon will provide timber. Thrace would be modern-day Bulgaria. Now, there is wide distribution of grain. There's wide distribution of grain. And the grain usually is transported seaboard, okay? It's usually transported over water. So there's wide distribution of grain, iron tools, cheap textiles, Kitchen utensils meaning forks, spoons, knives, and that's rare too, because in large parts of Europe, people still ate with their hands, okay? Not everyone used kitchen utensils. Leather footwear, sandals, and pottery. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorize a list like this. The reason why I'm mentioning it to you is to give you an idea of how diverse this trade network was and the huge amount of items that went through the Persian Empire. However, I'm going to tell you that Darius also had a social conscience. He's not a petty tyrant. He's not the tyrant that the Greeks made him out to be. First of all, to protect the poorer citizens of the Persian Empire, Darius is going to regulate wages and working hours. In other words, he's going to actually come up with the minimum wage for labor. And he's going to regulate working hours so that people are not oppressed and that people have, in effect, get their basic needs met. They didn't have this in Greece at the time. Okay? You look at, very good, Greece was basically a slave society. You look at Sparta, they basically enslaved Messenia and basically created the Messenians into generational slaves called helots. Okay? You don't see anything similar to that in Persia. Does Persia have slaves? Yes. They're prisoners of war. But manumission is easier, and there's also certain freedoms that the Persian Empire had that Greece didn't have. Darius will create seaports along the Persian Gulf. Darius will create seaports along the Persian Gulf. And he's going to complete a canal. He's going to complete a canal linking the Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean through the Red Sea.
Moving to other places?
Yes, he's going to basically create a canal linking the Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean through the Red Sea. A pre-Suez Canal, if you will. This was originally begun by an Egyptian pharaoh, but you'll have to know Necho. Okay? And what he's also going to do is explore Africa's west coast. Africa's east coast. He's going to explore Africa's east coast, the Aegean. The Aegean, of course, is part of the Mediterranean. That Greece is on the western side, and Ionia and Turkey on the eastern side. Okay. He's going to actually look for the sources of the Indus River, too. These are going to be all areas for Persian exploration. Why? Because Darius is interested in the world around him.
Working there for natural resources, or?
Oh, he could be there for natural resources, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to know about the world around him. He's an intellectually curious man. Yeah, Luis?
What did you say for the Aegean? The Aegean what?
The Aegean,
The African coast?
East Africa,
Yeah.
and let me see what I left out. The sources of the Indus.
Okay. Which river is that?
The source of the Indus River.
Indus?
Yes. The Indus River flows through Pakistan. It's basically right over here, where it says six. Okay? Yes?
With all of his past exploration, did he ever make it like the Vikings did to the Americas or anything?
Highly unlikely. You never know. Anything is possible, but we don't have records of that. Okay? And the Persians just did not have that type of mastery of the high seas. If they were dependent on oceanic exploration, they usually had to have Persian commanders, but they had to have with them Phoenician sailors, because the Phoenicians and the Greeks tended to be the best. And Paul? Well, I don't want to get into that right now. Most likely they could have, as far as I'm concerned, whoever may have made it to the Americas is outside the pale of this course. And once again, I have to keep things tight. And I will say, I'll just leave it at this. For our purposes, it's the Europeans that count the most because they're the ones that actually colonized the Americas and basically disrupted the indigenous population. With regard to that, Darius is going to be the first of the Persian Shah to preside over 4 capitals. The first is Mudrâya. Okay? Mudrâya, let me see if I can show it to you on the map, relatively speaking. It would be located right about here, where Shiraz would be. This is where Mudrâya would be, and I'm going to mention certain things about it. It's the original Achaemenid capital. And as you know, it's the burial place of Cyrus. And it was a coronation and marriage site. It was a coronation and marriage site for Darius. By the way, Cyrus will actually have a daughter that will marry Darius. You don't have to take down her name, it's Atossa. If Cyrus's daughter Atossa will be one of Darius' 6 wives.
I guess this might be the islands is like,
Basically 6. God bless you. Okay, there's your answer. Okay. Actually, not at the same time. This was in effect his first wife, and she will predecease him. Basically, Mudrâya is going to be the site of a palace network, lush gardens, and temples. It's going to be the site of a palace network, lush gardens, and temples. Okay? Susa is located once again in the lower Zagros mountain in the modern-day town of Shush. And it's located around here, and I'm going to tell you a few things about it. Susa was the ancient capital of Elam. And this is going to be the administrative capital for Darius and his successors, but only during the winter. Because Susa during the summertime is unbearably hot. It's very torrid during the summer. It's the winter administrative capital. It's used as the administrative capital, but during the winter only, because it's unbearably hot in the summer. In the city, the modern city of Hamadan, located right here, is Ecbatana. Ecbatana was the old Median capital. Not a problem. I'm here to help my students. Now,
What was Ecbatana?
Ecbatana was the old capital of the Medes. And this is going to be your summer capital for the Achaemenids. Why? Because it's located higher up, which means that during the summer it is a lot cooler. Okay? And it's also basically a place that the Persians are going to use as training for war. Why? Because they have a lot of animals born in there, strangely enough, including Asian lions, which have, I don't even know if they have them anymore. They might be extinct. Does anyone know if Asia still has lions?
Yeah.
I mean, they do.
in Mudrâya.
They still have them in Gujarat.
Yeah,
Really?
white lions.
Okay, that's good to know. Not that I want to meet them.
100 guys. They have them in Greece.
In Greece itself, outside of the zoos?
Well, Hercules was known.
Oh, yes, going back that far. Yeah, the Nemean lion was one of his 12 flavors, and he was identified with the iconography of one of the lions there,
Right.
with a club. Sure, how can I forget Heracles? It's one of my favorites. And basically, the area is going to be used as a place for hunting lions. And in certain bas-reliefs that we'll see of Iranians, they're going to actually show them on lion hunts and stuff like that. Okay. Now,
I'm sorry. Is this a mountainous area so that they're coming up.
Oh my! Yes, it's going to be a mountainous area, well watered, and because it's mountainous and it's high up, it's cooler.
Right.
That's why you want to be there during the summer. You don't want to be in Susa during the summer. Susa is very hot. Okay, so this is going to be the winter administrative capital. Now, the last of the four capitals will be the city of Persepolis. Now, Persepolis is not an indigenous word. Persepolis is a Greek word. It means city of the Persians. Okay? We don't actually know what the Persians called it. Now, Persepolis is actually slightly north of Shiraz. Okay, slightly north of Shiraz, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a beautiful city, even in its ruin. The city is created from scratch, by Darius. And it's about 30 miles north of Shiraz. And I'm going to tell you what the function of Persepolis is. It's a ceremonial center. It's a ceremonial center where the vassals will profess obeisance and bring tribute. Meaning, in effect, this is a place where they're going to meet the Shah and they're going to bring delegations to the Shah that are going to take oaths of submission to him. And they're going to give tribute to him. Barracks, palaces, administrative buildings, barracks, palaces, administrative buildings, and a huge treasury with itemization, which is recorded, and a huge treasury with itemization, which is recorded in several languages by scribes, will all be present in Persepolis. Now, Darius is going to do something very revolutionary. As if he hadn't done enough, you think of Darius as creating coinage, you think of him as creating roads and trade arteries, you think of him as creating satrapies. He's also going to create a written script for Persia. And we know this as Old Persian. Now, I wanted to mention something about Old Persian to you. And I'm going to basically mention it because the story about its translation is kind of interesting. I want to take you to the 1800s. You don't have to take this down. To an English scholar by the name of Henry Rawlinson. He is going to end up working on a rock cliff at a place called the Hesdu. Why does he work there? Why is it important? Well, first of all, this rock cliff is going to have carvings into the living rock. And the carvings needed to be basically translated. And what Rawlinson is going to do is he's going to spend most of his time translating these edicts of Darius the Great at the Hesdu. The Hesdu is located right here, near the modern-day city of Kermanshah. Now, Rawlinson himself was born April 5th, 1810, under the sign of Aries the Ram, and he dies in 1895. And what he does takes major cojones. First of all, this rock cliff has to be seen from far away. If Darius is going to have people carve inscriptions into the rock, he wants to make sure people see this. The higher up it is, the more imposing it is, right? When you look up at something, you feel awe of it. And you're going to get an inscription of Darius himself physically. He's going to actually be portrayed, and you're going to see several Iranian figures portrayed in the rock cliff. But in order to translate the inscriptions, you have to get close to it, especially if you don't know the three languages that are on it. And the three languages that these edicts are written in are Elamite, the language of the Elamites, the people of Elam; Akkadian. Akkad is the old Mesopotamian city that had a Semitic language. You're probably familiar with Sargon of Akkad. Remember, Sumerian or Sumer was not Semitic. Akkad was Semitic. And you're going to have Old Persian. Now, why does this take Major League guts? Well, the cliff is about 50 stories high above the ground, and you have a ledge about this narrow on which Rawlinson is going to work. And if he were to just stumble, he'd fall the equivalent of a 50-story building to his death. No, just basically summer and winter. And as soon as the summer comes along, or just before that, whenever it gets hot, they're going to basically move from Susa to Ecbatana. And Persepolis, of course, is where Darius is mostly going to preside. Now back to Rawlinson. What Rawlinson is going to do, and Akkadian, let me spell it for you. Okay, now, what's going to happen is, Rawlinson himself is familiar with the other languages, and realizing that, in effect, the other languages are saying the same thing. Elamite and Akkadian are saying the same message. He figures out over time how to translate Old Persian, which he does. And it's because of Henry Rawlinson that we know a great deal about Darius's reign. The reason why I'm spending so much time talking about Darius's reign is because it's the most important, and it's the apogee of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It's at its highest point, and it's indicative of the empire at its zenith, and why it's important, and why we should give a damn about it. Now, the bureaucratic and court attendant retinue, the bureaucratic and court attendant retinue, the bureaucratic and court attendant retinue, retainers, if you will include a chamberlain, and the chamberlain is in charge of protocol. Meaning, in effect, you make sure how you act in front of the Shah, you bow low enough, or whatever. You're going to have a secretary in charge of administration. You're going to have an official taster, okay, because emperors are always afraid of being poisoned. So you're going to get somebody who has an unenviable task of tasting your food first to see if it's poison or not, and you wait, I guess, in a certain amount of time. The Chinese used to do this too. As a matter of fact, they used to serve the emperor his breakfast and dinner on silver platters, believing that most poisons would tarnish silver. And that's interesting too, because the Qing Dynasty emperor used to have a 28-course breakfast menu. But I don't want you to think he's a glutton or a pig. Okay, he'll probably just take a bite of each and then leave it to whoever.
When I went to Hyderabad in the fort called Golconda, India, they showed us the plate. If you put poison on it, it changes the color.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Oh yeah, it does work with certain poisons. And what's going to happen is, of course, just to make sure that the plate works, have somebody else taste it before you do. And you make sure you watch them swallow, and how are you doing? You okay? I should have had that before I had my first Big Mac at McDonald's. To save myself a night, in the intensive care unit. The cupbearer. The cupbearer is going to bring the king his cup. You're going to have a charioteer. You'll have nobles and their royal offspring at the court. You'll have military commanders, and the Shah himself will have 1,000-man bodyguard. He'll have 1,000-man bodyguard. And this point I'm going to elaborate on fairly soon, Magi priests. Okay? And I want to talk to you about the function of Zoroastrianism under the Achaemenids, especially under Darius. Now, Darius is going to have an inner cabinet of close advisors. And there are going to be 6 of them that make up his inner cabinet. Along with this inner cabinet, he's going to have eunuchs in attendance, and the eunuchs usually guard his concubines. A concubine is a woman you have for sexual pleasure. You don't have a legal relationship with them. You're not married to them. You basically use them for sexual pleasure. And the eunuchs are going to be the guards to make sure no one else is messing with your concubines. Eunuchs are castrated men, and this way you'll know that if they're guarding the women, that there won't be any roosters in the hen. That you'll know your children are your own. Okay? Now, Darius is going to change. Yes, Sarah. All eunuchs are castrated. It means losing testicles. Okay. The Shah did not get with No. You're a legitimate heir, and the main reason why you get married, for the most part, are legitimate or to your offspring. A bastard, an illegitimate child out of wedlock, cannot receive this. However, there have been cases where if legitimate offspring die out, where an illegitimate child can take over. That has not been that unusual, okay? So that can happen. Now, with regard to Darius himself, he changes the concept of royalty. You see, traditionally speaking, the Persian monarch was considered the first among equals. Traditionally speaking, the Persian monarch was considered the first among equals. And under Darius, the king will have unquestioned power and a sacred persona. His personage will be august. No one will challenge it. It's sacred. And Darius and his successors will declare Zoroastrianism to be the official state religion. Sorry, I had a question or a comment. Yes. Yes. Darius changes the concept of royalty. As the Persian monarchs before him were considered the first among equals. Think of Cyrus and Cambyses as first among equals, meaning we're all equals together, I'm just, the most prominent. But under Darius, he's not the first among equals. His persona is sacred. He doesn't have any. In other words, his personage becomes elevated and his power unquestioned. When you have equals, even if you're first among equals, you're going to listen to them for advice. However, if I don't have equals, I don't listen to advice. You listen to me. I'm sorry, could you raise your voice? In Egypt, not in the Persian Empire. Okay, only in Egypt. Kim?
Is it going to be for the entire northern Indian subcontinent?
The whole Persian Empire.
So the temples in Bulgaria are
We'll talk about those later. Let me talk about how he's going to institute. Zoroastrianism, and then I'll answer that. And Janice?
Before the Institute, what percentage of the people actually follow Zoroastrianism?
Your guess is as good as mine or anyone else's. I will tell you for the most part, the majority of people practicing Zoroastrianism in the Persian Empire will have been in what will be modern-day northeastern Iran and what would be Turkestan and parts of Afghanistan. That's the crash for Zoroastrianism, and that's where you're going to see most of the proponents. It's going to radiate out further, and I would say that in the other parts of Iran, maybe you might have about 50% practicing Zoroastrianism. In northeastern Iran, I would say close to 100%. And let's go this way back. Yes, Josh.
You said there were 6 advisors that he had?
Yeah.
Is they getting that number from like the book of Esther from mentioning there? What is that?
They got the number because those were exactly the people that helped him overthrow the usurper that succeeded Cambyses. Those were the people that helped murder the usurper, and that's why I took them. They were, in effect, the people that helped him depose of the previous ruler. He knew him personally. And Paul.
I have 2 questions. The first one was, how much resistance you get for becoming alienated or emperor from the old Persian people?
Let's explore that. Yeah, go ahead.
And the second one is, knowing that you converted to Zoroaster, does that help base Zoroaster? Or how far away is he?
Another good question. Wait till I elaborate on this and extrapolate on it, and you'll see. And I'll answer both questions in time. Just give me several minutes.
I'm gonna wait.
Okay. Well, yes, the official religion of the Persian Empire. Right. Yes, but Egypt will end up throwing both the Persian yoke. We'll talk about that later. But yes, however, I'm going to explain to you that while it's the official religion of the empire, that doesn't mean that Darius is going to persecute minorities, religious minorities, or people, and he's not going to go into Jerusalem and force the Jews to become Zoroastrian. He's not going to teach us to force the Egyptians to become Zoroastrian. What he's going to say is that you're under an empire that has Zoroastrianism as its official religion, but you don't necessarily have to become a Zoroastrian, but you do have to respect the fact that this religion is fine. Okay, Sean?
Is there a reason why is it that?
Yes, and I'd like to elaborate on that if I can. Yes.
Do they give like certain like tax breaks or anything like that to people who are of the state religion?
These are all great questions, and I'm going to answer that for you now. The whole litany of them. Okay, first of all, basically, Darius and his successors declared Zoroastrianism to be the official state religion, and when they conquer, they're going to conquer in the name of Ahura Mazda. Now, Zoroastrian worship will not be forced upon anyone, as I have said before. We're going to talk about it more in detail, but you have to give me a little more time. Rishi, to stay away from my class, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, basically, the major elite Persian force was known to the Greeks as the 10,000 Immortals. This is the elite Persian force. And garrisons of Persian regular troops will guard key points throughout the empire. They will guard key points throughout the empire.
Can we repeat that? The major
elite Persian force was known to the Greeks as the 10,000 Immortals, Mark Shaw. Have you not heard that term before? Okay, you didn't see 300? That great historical film. Well, I don't want to get into that. Into the 300, according to Frank Miller, yes.
Oh, there's 2,000 more. They're known as.
Excuse me, ladies, I'm sorry, I need to hear. Yes.
Isn't that like a contradiction to the violence? How do you?
No. Zoroastrianists are okay with violence as long as you're fighting the god of evil. Okay? So if you're fighting the forces of anger or Mayuni, it's fine. Remember that this is not Christianity. It's not turn the other cheek, even though that's really practice.
So everybody
But, yep. Yeah, they've been serving the forces of darkness and forces of evil.
10,000 immortals and
Okay. And garrisons of Persian regular troops who guard key points throughout the empire. Okay? Now, in emergencies, the Shah will call up additional levies. In emergencies, the Shah, and I'll use Shah and Emperor interchangeably, the Shah will call up additional levies from the satrapies. And the additional levies from the satrapies will include native units that are organized and deployed according to their traditional fighting methods. In emergencies, the emperor will call up additional levies from the satrapies and will call up native units that were organized and deployed according to their traditional fighting methods. This is what that means. If somebody has expertise in archery, you use archers. If somebody has expertise in light infantry, you use them. If somebody has expertise in charioteers and javelins, you use them. Specialized modes of killing. Okay? Mercenaries will also be hired. And why not? Because the Persian Empire is wealthy enough. The type of mercenaries will usually be Greek mercenaries. That will be Greek fighting men called hoplites. Now,
Called what?
hoplites, Hoplites. Now, in 514 to 512 BC, you're going to see Darius assemble more than 100,000 men. In 514 to 512 BC, Darius will assemble more than 100,000 men and 300 to 600 ships, and he's basically going to conquer parts of Eastern Europe, including this area of Thrace, and the Persians will establish a foothold now on the European continent.
I'm sorry, how many men?
100,000 men, 300 to 600 ships. So you're going to basically see a Persian foothold in Europe now. There will be attacks against the Scythians. Scythians are also called Sakas. Remember, these are the steppe nomads, of which the Massagetæ were a branch. The Persians are actually related to them. If you use Sakas or Scythians, either one is fine. Okay? The Scythians will successfully resist Persian attempts at subjugation. And the reason why the Scythians are able to do this is they're highly mobile. The Scythians are highly mobile. They resist with guerrilla warfare. Now, in 486 BC, the Persian Empire stops expanding. And it stops expanding because something major happens in 486 BC. Darius dies. He passes away. So what its purpose is right now is to consolidate, in the face of intermittent revolts, and some territorial contraction. Territorial contraction means the territory shrinks. The reason why it shrinks? Obvious. When people that are on the borders of the Persian Empire hear that Darius passed away, they're wondering if his progeny, who will be the Shah Xerxes, will be as strong a ruler. So they're going to contest the rule of the Persians when they think their strong Shah will be succeeded by a weaker one. Now, I don't have the time to go into the Persian wars with the Greeks. That's better off for ancient Greek and Roman history. If you were to take Dr. Joel Allen, if you were to take yes, John Maxwell Bryan would be good, and also Josh Kinlaw. Any three of those scholars would, in effect, elaborate on the Persian Greek wars. I do not want to mention it except in passing, because while the Persian wars were very central in Greek history, because the Greeks had a lot to lose if the Persians won. They would lose their independence. For the Persians to basically not conquer Greece is not a major reason for them falling, regardless of what was to happen later with Macedonia. Okay? Now, while the Greeks will be a nuisance for the Persian Empire, whether as subjects or foreign antagonists, and while Egypt's proud heritage will chafe under Persian rule, while the Greeks will be a nuisance for the Persian Empire, whether as subjects or foreign antagonists, and while Egypt's proud heritage will chafe under Persian rule, it's not until Alexander the Great in 330 that the Achaemenids will collapse. It's not until Alexander that the Achaemenids collapse. Now, like other military empires before it, the Achaemenids ruthlessly eliminate opponents. Like many other military empires before it, the Achaemenids will ruthlessly eliminate opponents both in the form of foreign enemies or disaffected subjects. Yet, disaffected subjects. Subjects were disgruntled, unhappy. Yet, the Achaemenids will be the first great West Asian empire. To provide an articulate justification for their hegemony, for their rule, giving it a universal validity. And I'll go from the top. Like other military empires before it, the Achaemenids will ruthlessly eliminate opponents, both in the form of foreign enemies, external enemies, or disaffected subjects. In other words, they're going to meet all threats, external and internal. Yet, they're going to be the first great West Asian empire to provide an articulate justification for their hegemony, giving it a universal validity. And now I want to talk to you about what Darius wanted to leave as a legacy in Persia and in the world. In the rock cliff at the Hestun, Darius is going to sustain his identity. In the rock inscription at the Hestun, Darius will sustain his identity as an Iranian warlord. So he's not giving up his tribal roots completely. He still portrays himself as an Iranian warlord, but also as a universal monarch. He's not just an Iranian warlord. Yes, he's that, but he's more than that. He's a universal monarch, and this is the way he describes himself, and you don't have to take it down. I'm a Persian, son of a Persian, an Aryan, having Aryan lineage. This is letting you know his connection to his Iranian warlord status. But he's also going to say something else. He's also going to say, I am the Shah, I am the king of all countries, containing all kinds of men, kings of this great earth, far and wide. Meaning that yes, I'm an Iranian warlord, but I'm more than that. Look at what I have. Look at what I've created. Look at what I've forged. A multi-ethnic, multilingual empire made up of a whole congery of peoples. I've managed a huge swathe of land bestriding Africa, Europe, Asia. I rule over thousands of miles of territory. These people are under my care. I am their leader. They are my people, whether they're Iranian or not. This is a major claim. Did the Assyrians rule like that? No. The Assyrians ruled by terror and terror alone. Why do we rule you? We rule you because you're vermin, and I proved it in battle because I whipped your asses on the battlefield. And you have no rights. I don't care about ruling you. I just want to make sure that you pay tribute. And if you don't, I'm going to rip your skin off your body. I'm going to boil your children in oil right in front of your faces. But nothing quite that drastic here. This is an attempt to show rule by universal law, by a political entity. That's why this is important. That's why it's worth studying.
It's worth it because he let them do what they wanted. That's how you won the whole war.
As long as they paid tribute.
As if they paid taxes.
That's right. If they did the military service, they paid the taxes. You didn't have to worship Marduk. You didn't have to worship Baal. You didn't have to worship Ahura Mazda, even though it's an official Zoroastrian state. Okay? As long as you basically paid your taxes to military service, you are under Persian law, and Persian law is fair, honest, and reliable. And the economic integration he created is beneficial to all his subjects, and it's protected by the arrows and spears of the formidable Persian army. Charlotte?
You said that he included this practice, but was that included the families or was that just
The rise of the people, and in the event that somebody was guilty of what would be a whole. Remember that he basically paid an arrow by having ready to the serpent. Somebody who did not have the blood and the Darius did have integrity. It wasn't very strong for his time, but he did have integrity. So he sees himself as the ruler of our right. Anyone who tries to overthrow him is also not just trying to overthrow him, but they're screaming the face that once you've got a Hormone, gives them the right to rule. So therefore, what you do with someone like that is you eliminate a movie skull. And for those people that were guilty of basically revolting against Darius, he would put them to death in pretty horrible ways. Generally speaking, if you followed Darius, you would fare pretty well. If you crossed him, however, you would get pretty much a treatment that the Assyrians tended to give everyone. It's just that the Assyrians enjoy doing it more, they're more lavish in that treatment, and they also force their gods upon us. Reason why not? Because our gods gave us victory over you, so therefore you sacrifice to our gods. We don't give a damn about it.
Just seems like, why is Cyrus so well known and then Darius is not so mentioned? Like, it seems like he did.
Okay. Did you know of Cyrus before you took the course? Did you know of Darius? Okay, that's interesting. How many people here knew of Cyrus the Great before they took the course? Okay. How many of you knew of Darius before? A little less. Okay. I would tend to say that people tend usually to know the founders of an empire. Okay? Darius is not the founder of the Achaemenid dynasty. What he does is he enlarges it and he sustains what Cyrus had created. So, and he basically, in effect, rules over the Persian Empire at its apogee. If people don't know as much about him as they should, so now I think that's a fault of our educational system. How many of you were taught Iranian history at the lower grade level? Rest my case. Right, in relation to someone else. And usually the Persians were portrayed, if you would basically take in similar places to me, as menaces, as barbarians. As, you know,
There's this whole thing where they were dictatorial, we were democracy.
Right, exactly. Despotic Asians against, democratic Hellenes.
Western nationalism comes out of this.
Right.
Because like Socrates and Plato were all contemporaries with Darius.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, Socrates later and Plato basically later, but you're right. And Cleisthenes, Ephialtes, Solon, these are the great people that are associated with Athenian democracy. Yeah, and Solon actually was with the Athenians, and he was a fellow that basically revised the draconian laws of Draco, and basically dealt with Athens' debt crisis. Yes?
I was taught Esther, the Book of Esther, so that incorporates Iranian history.
Very good, very good. And usually in the Book of Esther, of course, the Persians are shown in a kind of Jekyll and Hyde way. There are good Persians and bad Persians, Haman being, of course, the bad one. And I would think that for the most part, as people like Ernest Gellner and Wittfogel and historians like that, they would always refer, especially Wittfogel, to Asian despotism. Okay, I have all sorts of problems with that, and I'll address your question in a little while. I just wanted to... What's that? Yeah, and I have issues with him, even though I think he's an entertaining writer.
He's entertaining, but I have very serious issues with everybody.
Oh, myself as well. I don't want to get into that now. He was at Sarah Lawrence College, and the God of Thousand Faces and the Masks of God, I do have issues with, even though he's a fine writer. But I will tell you that the king is seen as being an earthly steward for the dispensation of justice. So the Shah is going to be seen as an earthly steward for the dispensation of justice. And what he's going to represent is uniting the fate of the monarchy and its subjects. So he's going to unite the fates of the monarchy and its subjects. And the monarchy is in many respects still a tribal one. The monarchy is still in many respects tribal. And its armies are still mostly tribal levies. Yes, you are. This is under Darius. Okay, we're talking about Darius. Now, the monarchy was in many respects still a tribal one, and its army mostly tribal levies. The king, the Shah, was basically the supreme chieftain of a victorious confederacy. The Shah would be the supreme chieftain of the victorious confederacy, and the state revenue will be based upon tribute. State revenue will be based upon tribute. Now, there are 4 points I want to mention that are under Darius and his successors, and I'll explain to you what these 4 points are that are indicative of Darius and his successors. Okay? Number 1, the monarchy is elevated above every other Persian institution. The monarchy is elevated over every other Persian institution. The second will be that the tribal nobility is going to be slowly transformed. The tribal nobility will be slowly transformed into a nobility of service. Meaning, in effect, they lose their equal status with the Shah. They're going to be serving the Shah. They're not going to be, almost equal to him. That elaborates on the first point. This third point is that the army will assume over time a multi-ethnic composition. The army will assume over time a multi-ethnic composition. And the last point, which is something I mentioned before, but I want to hammer it home because it's important, is you're going to see an elaborate provincial administration. You're going to see an elaborate provincial administration of 20 satrapies. And I mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again because it's a very important legacy of Darius. You're going to see an elaborate provincial administration of 20 satrapies, with some areas enjoying indirect rule under their own hereditary rulers. You're going to see an elaborate provincial administration of 20 satrapies, with some areas enjoying indirect rule under their own hereditary rulers. Now, I'm going to close with this sentence, and then we're done. Should the monarch require counsel, and you don't offer it, he asks for it. Okay, should the monarch require counsel, advice, a trusted circle of advisors would give it to him. And this trusted circle of advisors would come from members of the nobility. This trusted circle of advisors would come from members of the nobility, close relatives, and cronies. Cronies being friends. As the position of vizier will not exist until the Islamic conquest. And we'll talk about the position of vizier another time. I know this is a lot to take in. How much of what I taught you tonight is new for you? Raise your hands. Okay, majority. That's okay. You did very well. Keep up the good work. It's a good class. And we're getting